Good afternoon. I'm Dara Bunjon. I'm the food enthusiast here at Jaymore Living. I'm a food writer, food stylist, PR maven, and a frustrated baker. Those of you joining us live on Facebook, drop your comments and questions for my guest or myself in the comment box, and I will check from time to time. I'm excited to welcome back Becky Diamond to the program. We last spoke. She had just written the Gilded Age cookbook. Becky's a food writer, librarian, research historian. She has been writing about food since 2008, parlaying her passion for food and history into her recent publication of the book City Tavern, The Founding Table, Colonial Dining, Revolutionary History, and the restaurant at the center of it all. Actually, it comes out next Tuesday on August 31st. Diamond's other books are The Gilded Age Christmas Book, The $1,000 Dinner, Mrs. Goodfellow's The Story of America's First Cooking School. Let's welcome Becky.
Hi, Dara. It's so nice to be back.
Well, it's great to see you and have you back. You've been busy since we last talked. You did this book. Other than doing the show today, what else is on your plate to do?
Well, I'm working on a new proposal for a book about Edith Wharton's recipes. So I have her recipe book that was loaned to me by a woman named Gwyneth Todd, and her family, which is the Tyler family, has some of Edith Wharton's possessions because Gwyneth's great grandmother was very good friends with Edith Wharton, and she left her many of her things. So we're finally kind of trying to put this into a book of recipes and anecdotes and how Edith Wharton entertained throughout her life. So that's on my plate to do and have that proposal go to publishers.
Edith Wharton, forgive me for not knowing who she is. Can you tell us a little bit about her?
Sure.
Obviously, food's involved.
Right. So she was a writer from the late 1800s through early 1900s. She died in 1937. And she lived, I mean, she was born during the Gilded Age, really, and lived through that in New York City. And then also would go to Newport, Rhode Island, would after she married Teddy Wharton, they moved up to Lenox, Massachusetts. There's an estate there that's still open to this day. They reopened it, the Mount, it's called, and it's a beautiful place where you can go and walk the grounds and see how Edith lived there. And then eventually she moved to France and spent the rest of her life in France and helped with World War I efforts. But throughout all of that, she loved to entertain, and she was very in touch with writers of the time. And they had these groups that they would get together, and this is all what I wanted to talk about in the book, how they had these literary circles and how she really integrated her travels in her entertaining and food that she provided on the table. She wasn't necessarily making it herself, but she had people to help with that and just what was important to her and how she presented things and all of that. So
Sort of a salon for literary writers and food.
exactly. Yeah, all part of that.
Right.
And one of the most significant things, she wrote The Age of Innocence and won the Pulitzer. She was the first woman to win a Pulitzer Prize, so that's pretty significant. And her stories still resonate today, and they're from what I understand, they're remaking The Age of Innocence for Netflix, and then another book, Custom of the Country, is going to be made into a movie. Sydney Sweeney is going to star and produce it. This is all what I've gleaned in my research. So, I mean, her stories still resonate today, and I want to tell that through the food that was impactful to her.
Right. Well, I did see it. Was it Netflix or BritBox? I'm not quite sure. It might be The Age of Innocence.
So
Could
there was the movie from the 1980s, Martin Scorsese, that it was very popular, and people to
okay.
this day still love it.
I might have it confused. But that's what we'll talk about in 2.5 years or 3 years when the
Right.
book comes out.
Exactly. Exactly.
We should both be here. All right.
Mhm.
When you were on the first time, I usually ask the question about the family table, and I didn't ask you that. So I figure now's the time. Growing up, what was your family table like? Did you all sit down together? What was dinner time or meals like with your family?
Sure. We absolutely all sat down together, at least whenever we could. Once my siblings and I got into high school, it was more difficult with all the activities and things. But my mom and her three sisters and my grandmother all went to school for home economics. So my mom was very well versed in cooking, sewing, all of that. We had a garden, a very big garden, because my dad also he actually went to the ag school at Rutgers, Cook. So he was very into agriculture, and so we had gardening was part of my growing up, and my mom would can and put things up in jars and all of that, preserve. So we had a lot of fresh food on the table, not a lot of junk, and frankly, my siblings and I didn't have cavities either. All my friends were like going to the dentist to get their cavities filled, and I didn't have any. So that shows that there was not a lot of sugar involved and all of
Right,
that. So
right,
yeah.
right. With this book, City Tavern, The Founding Table, Colonial Dining, Revolutionary History, and the restaurant at the center of it. This is a lot to say. So, folks, I'm only going to say City Tavern, The Founding Table from now on. But links will come up where you can purchase the book and contact Becky. So, did you plan it or did it just work out? America's celebrating the 250th birthday of the country. And how apropos that your new book, City Tavern, The Founding Table, was really almost the center of the Revolutionary War.
Mhm.
George Washington, everybody gathered at City Tavern. What piqued your interest in writing this book?
So this was really interesting how it all came about, and I have to thank Chef Walter Stabe really for bringing this idea to me. And he was the chef at the City Tavern from 1991 through 2020 when it closed. It is closed right now. The back garden is open, and you can go there. And they're doing something for the 250th, like where you can get little nibbles and drinks and things. But I had met him when I was working on my first book, Mrs. Goodfellow, and we just developed this friendship. And he wrote the two forewords for my cookbooks, which was so kind. And then, he's written several City Tavern cookbooks from his time there, but he really wanted a history of the tavern told. And he knew that there was a whole lot of material on it because the City Tavern that's there today is a reconstructed version. The original was torn down in 1854. So the version that's standing there now was reconstructed for the bicentennial in 1976. So, um, when they did that, the National Park Service had all these records and things that, what a tavern would have looked like, what its footprint was, what the bills would have been. So all that material was very helpful in recreating the story. And Chef Stabe also sent me some materials that he had too. So putting all that together is how this came about. And it was in a pretty short time frame, like you said, because we wanted to do it for the 250th. So, yeah.
Well, what I found, you sent me we'll say a copy is best of the book, and in going through it, um, City Tavern. This was a common name in many cities in the 1700s. There would be a gathering place, and they would just call it the City Tavern. Um, What I didn't know, because I was never a history buff, I did the minimal that I had to do in high school and never followed through. But it brought to light that Philadelphia was the largest port at the time.
Mhm.
And I just never thought of Philadelphia as being a port. I think of New York, I think of Baltimore, because we have a huge port. And that Philadelphia at that time in the 1770s had the largest population amongst the colonies. Now, there are taverns, there are public houses, there's tap rooms, there's dram shops. They all sort of fall into the same category.
Yeah, basically a place to go to get some food and drink and just rest up as well, you know, and to meet with people.
Right. So, public houses, inns, and ordinaries. Now, ordinaries was a new word for me, but folks, ordinaries basically meant a restaurant, didn't it?
Yeah, I think it was something that was more a little more upscale than a base. I mean, there were some, like you were just saying, so many different versions, and a tavern that was out further, like say I'm traveling from Philadelphia to Baltimore at that time, I would have to make several stops because I'm doing it by horse and buggy or whatever. So there were taverns along the way that where I could stop and have a drink or even stay overnight. And those were different than the taverns in the cities, but they all were places where you could get food and drink and like I said, meet with people. So the taverns that were further out, more isolated, still people surrounding that area would go and meet together, and that's how the city tavern really became so significant because it was a central meeting place in Phil, and they knew Philadelphia was the hub of colonial America at that time.
Right. And the size of it was unique compared to other inns and taverns. And people, it isn't just a place to there. They had to have carriage houses. They had to have some place to put the horses.
Right.
This was all part and parcel of this. And the city tavern, the one in Philadelphia, um, it was 54 men of wealth that put up the money to build it.
Right, like a stock, almost like buying stock in it, like, and then they would have say too into what was happening with it. So, yeah.
Right. What was unique from reading what you said, that they had the long room. This had a facility to hold many people, which you didn't find in most taverns. And what type of foods were served? Can we talk about that?
Sure. So many times they would do what they called a cold collation, which was cold cooked foods. And this was easy to put out if people then almost like a buffet kind of style. So think ham or chicken, turkey, some kind of poultry. They did a lot with gelatin, like molds and things. And we think today like a jello, fruity mold, but it wasn't necessarily like that. It was cold, other like meats and even vegetables and things. But when they encased it in this clear gelatin, then it would preserve it for a longer time. So think about like they had to keep things cold and from the food, the food from going bad. So that was one sort of thing they would do. And then there was all kinds of desserts like that too, whether or not they were jellies, gelatins, but cakes and what we would call cookies. They would call them small cakes then, and things like that, and candies. But they also would do these meals, these club dinners. And this is what George Washington, and a lot of the other founding fathers would also often participate in. So think they're sitting at a table, maybe 10 gentlemen, it could be some of the other delegates from, the Continental Congress, and food will be passed on platters and then you take what you want. So again, it would be like think a roast, chicken, turkey, fish, some kind of game, and then, potatoes, vegetables. They did like cold salads, like cucumber and things like that. And then again, dessert. But they would pass it around family style, and then they would all pay, like split the cost as a set price. But that happened throughout both of the Continental Congresses, and then eventually the Constitutional Convention too, which was later. So that style. And then other groups, like clubs, would do something similar too, because many clubs like the Masons and other groups would meet there.
The thing that interested me, or there were a couple things, but it stood out to me that because it was a port,
Hmm.
what I didn't know that was available. Now, I know Jefferson did some things from Europe, brought it into Monticello, but pineapples, they had pineapples, bananas, coconut, winter grapes from the Canary Islands, citrus from Spain, wines from Portugal, and the turtle soup, which Philadelphia was famous for, were these sea turtles from the Caribbean. And I think you said in the book they could have up to 3 deliveries a day.
Hmm.
So I found those to be very unique. And were the kitchens more hearth cooking? I mean, if you're doing they sort of said it from what you said, that the men would come in and they'd have breakfast, lunch, dinner, or if they wanted something later, they just had to order it. It was
Hmm.
really very open. So what were the kitchens? Do you have any concept of what the kitchens were like?
The kitchens, from my understanding, would have been in the basement or in the back there. And again, that's to keep it, that's the coolest spot, number one. And it absolutely would have been hearth cooking then, open fire, because they didn't have stoves yet, that we think of, and they were cold to start with. So there would have been, the huge fireplace, and then the oven, probably several of them, honestly, for that large of a space. And just that would be the cooking and prep area and things, and that was helpful too if it's in the back and the bottom, because that whole back area of the city tavern, like you mentioned, the horses, you could dismount there, and then somebody could help you bring in, or would bring in your bags for you if you're staying there overnight. The same with whatever food deliveries were coming in. They could come in through the back, and more discreet than coming in through the front there, and where everyone's kind of congregating. So it worked out in that respect as well.
And you talked about people riding from city to city and stopping at these inns. What I was interested in is you brought in that Paul Revere
Hmm.
spent
Right.
it was after the Boston Tea Party.
Yes. Yep. And he came riding, and so really Boston wanted to get Philadelphia like on their side, because the troubles were all starting to brew there in Boston, and they knew that they needed the buy-in from folks in Philadelphia, because there were so many wealthy men there, merchants, and just well-connected people. So that's why he wanted to make his way. And apparently he did it in 6 days, which is incredible, on horseback. But he would switch his horse every so often. And he also stopped in other cities, in Connecticut as well as New York City. He wanted to spread the news. That's how, today we're so used to instantaneous news, but they didn't have that at all. So that's how they had these committees of correspondence, they were called, and these riders would go, like an early Pony Express kind of thing. And yeah, but he knew he had to get to Philadelphia, and he went straight to the City Tavern to tell the news of the Boston Tea Party. And then right after that, that's when they got together and said, okay, we're going to create this Continental Congress, because we need to know how we're going to really fight against all this, price raising and all of that stuff, and try to gain independence.
But so much of it was decided in the City Tavern. Yes, they went to, what was it, Carpenter's Hall.
Yep.
I actually remembered something.
Yeah, no, that yes, the first one was Carpenter's Hall, and then the second Continental Congress was in what we now know as Independence Hall. Yeah, yep.
Right. And, you know, you, there was something you said, and I was going to respond to it, and it's gone, and maybe it'll come back, maybe later tonight, who knows. Um, so we're talking about the Georgian period,
Hmm.
and that was like from 1714 to 1830, which was just about around the time that there was a fire at the City Tavern or Merchants Hall, they were calling it at the time.
Right, by that time it was called the Merchants Exchange. Yeah, so yep, that
Okay,
was 1834. Yeah.
right. So Victorian, 1830 to 1914. Then you get into the Gilded Age,
Hmm.
which was really what 1880 to 1900.
Yeah, maybe like 1870 they say it started. Yeah. So that like that last 30 years of that, that yeah, the 1800s.
The Industrial Revolution, people were making money, Diamond Jim Brady, blah, blah,
Hmm.
blah. And I will tell people that when you watch this, in the notes, I will put the link to the earlier interview I had with Becky, and we talked more in depth about her other books, The Gilded Age, Diamond Jim Brady, um, Mrs. Goodfellow, The Story of America's First Cooking School. So we don't need to rehash old news. It'll be there for you to read. And Walter Straub, he actually had a PBS series on.
Yes. Yeah, A
So,
Taste of History. Yeah.
and so you're saying the gardens at the new City Tavern,
Hmm.
not so new, but from in the 50s, 1976, around that time, um, that the gardens are open and there might be a bite, but you don't know whether they're at this point they're going to look to do anything with it.
Yeah, the last I heard, because I tried to get the most recent information before we publish this from the National Park. So the National Park Service owns the City Tavern building, and they're looking for a buyer, but it needs to become ADA compliant, up to code, and all the equipment, that you would need to really run a restaurant, and even have some historic equipment and things like that. So it needs somebody that's knowledgeable about all of those things. Absolutely. But hopefully, fingers crossed, it would be great. People just loved going there. Walter Stabe was just so wonderful. He would often come out and speak with people, and they would have historic reenactors walking around and things. So it really, think like that Williamsburg kind of atmosphere. And it's
Right.
in Old City, so that's the section of Philadelphia that we call it's called Old City. So it's all around that Independence Hall area where a
So,
lot went
right.
on. Yeah.
And not far from the water.
Right. And that's why it was important at that time in the colonial era, because the ships would come in, you would unload, you could get the goods, but also the merchants coming off the ships and things that would come to the city tavern, and that's where they would do business and post things that, something for sale or whatever. So it was a big hub of information and gathering. So yeah.
Right. It's not. Who handled the shipping? Why do I think Amish, but it's not Amish. It was another.
Yeah, I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah. There were
That's another
different
thing.
companies, I think, what is it, the East India Company and things like, but I don't know in Philadelphia who would have been the main one. And it's funny, just to dial back when you said a port city, the thing with Philadelphia, though, you have to go up the Delaware. That's why you might not think of it as a port city, but it was the food capital of the US before New York eclipsed it, really. Absolutely. Because of the bountiful farmland around there. And you were saying the Amish, it was the Pennsylvania Dutch had these huge dairy farms, and they would all come into Philadelphia markets and sell their goods. So, yeah.
Right. And one of the things you brought out in the book that most like city taverns had a market near it.
Hmm. Yeah, because they
So,
were eating so local, like today we're so used to just getting whatever we want from across the globe, but they were really eating locally and regionally.
right. The interesting thing for any of the younguns who just might listen to this is the city tavern was the social media of the day. That's where everything happened, everything revolved around it. And I just found so much of the book, City Tavern, The Founding Table, so interesting, enlightened me. It's just a shame that sometimes I can't remember all the details. Go with
No,
that.
it's a lot. It's a lot with the dates. I know, and I keep telling people I'm going. So for this book, I had to go back to like colonial era. I'm usually in the Gilded Age time frame, and now I'm going a little forward with Edith Wharton. So it's a lot to remember the dates and the people and the significant names and
Well,
all of that.
are you still president of the Historic Foodways of Delaware Valley?
Yes, I am. Yeah. So, and that's been a great resource to have with connections to,
Right.
to people and just the all the programs that we do. It's really fabulous. So, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Let's see. You have been very prolific about writing about food since 2008. That's what it says in your bio.
Hmm.
What were you doing prior to
Oh
2008?
boy. Yeah, so I worked in corporate for many, many years doing, I started out working for Dow Jones, doing editorial work for the Wall Street Journal, and um, then moved into more information like retrieval. So when I was at Dow Jones, I got my master's in library studies and then was able to work in an information resource center. So that's where the whole librarian part comes in and all the research that I love to do. But it was in a corporate setting for many years. And then I did executive search too, which again, I'm doing research on who are the best people for the jobs and that kind of thing. And then just did consulting work, different newsletters, and a lot with health, like the healthcare industry with J&J and different people, different companies like that. And then it just, when we moved to where I live now in Bucks County, PA, that's when I found this publisher that I thought maybe he'd have some work for me editing, but I pitched him the idea for my first book, and that's how it came about. So my favorite thing is combining research and writing together. Absolutely.
Yeah. And you got your master's at Rutgers, your father's
Yes.
alma mater.
Yeah, my,
Alma
my mother,
ma.
my mother and my father both. Well, my mother went to Douglas because she couldn't have gone to Rutgers because it wasn't open to women yet. So, but yeah. So,
That's great. That's great. Well, just to remind people, everything, how to connect with Becky, connects her up in the comments section. I will put our earlier interview link in there later today, so that'll be available to you. The book City Tavern, The Founding Table, Colonial Dining, Revolutionary History, and the restaurant at the center of it is officially out August 31st. But if you order it now, it could be in your hands by
yeah,
August 30th.
when it's funny you say that because I just looked on Amazon today and it's looking like it's available now. So I don't know. It's Amazon has to move things into place into their warehouses. So it could be available if you look at it today. I
Yeah,
don't know, but yeah.
okay. Well, time for my final questions. And I sort of
Sure,
changed them up because I've asked you other ones previously.
sure.
And maybe it's time to change them for everybody. So, what is your favorite food memory?
Oh gosh. There's so many. Like I mentioned, having that garden was so fabulous. As a kid, I didn't really like vegetables that much, but seeing all the love and care that my parents put into keeping that garden, it made me start to realize the significance. And I then planted my own little garden with things just that I liked, which was carrots, radishes, and pumpkins. And but it was so much fun to then wait and see them, and eat what you
Group?
planted. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
All right. What's the best piece of advice you've received?
Oh gosh. I think to just, if you're a writer, to just always keep writing. It doesn't matter what it is, but just keep writing and keep learning, keep being curious about things, and that's helped me throughout my time. And that's what leads you down rabbit holes as a writer. Okay, let me find out more about this. Is this enough to parlay into a story? So, yeah.
Yeah. Keep checking to see if there's any questions as yet. None. All right. What is your top cooking hack?
Oh boy, my top cooking hack. I'm really good at taking like a dish from the night before or 2 nights ago and repurposing it into something totally different, and my family loves it. Luckily, they like pretty much everything, and I know what they like. And to me, that's like a skill. Or looking in the fridge and saying, okay, I don't really know what I'm gonna have, but I can just throw different things together and come up with. So just trying different flavors together. Like to me, that's a good hack. Like just seeing what works together. You know, 'Cause I don't
Okay.
like to waste food. Food waste is not something I like to do. So,
Okay. If you could travel back in time, Scotty could beam you down, where would you be?
oh gosh. It's funny. A book series that really resonated with me as a child was the Little House series, and it's funny they have now a reboot on Netflix. But just the way Laura Ingalls Wilder wrote about food, to me it was amazing, and I would love to go back in time and just see how they made things work on the prairie when they had so little to cook with, and their equipment was just, I mean, you think, and I always tell people this, like that was all going on at the same time, all this stuff during the Gilded Age in New York and Newport, and they had all kinds of fancy things, but on the prairie they did not. And how were they able to come up with meals there? I would just love to see that, and see what they did
Yeah.
firsthand.
Um, I don't think I put this down. What's the best bite you've had all week?
The best bite that I've had? Um, gosh. I made this really good, and it sounds simple, but it was a shrimp salad that was just, it's been so hot in certain nights that you don't really feel like cooking, but it was just really, um, it could hit the spot for a weeknight dinner, and then some cucumbers on the side and some pasta, and it was a wonderful dinner, really. So.
I'm curious, what did you put in your shrimp salad?
You know what? A little pickle juice helped. And I had one dill pickle that I cut up real fine, um, and some dill, like actual dill, and just mayonnaise and a little. I might have put some lemon in there too, but I mean, it didn't. It had the pickle juice, so that was like
Right.
acid. So yeah, and just salt and pepper, and it just was really good. Oh, and okay, you know what? For that one, I'm thinking I'd also put some Old Bay, so you will love that. That I What's the
Yeah.
whole day in
No,
there?
because I did shrimp salad recently, and one of the things that I found, sometimes it gets watery after a day or
Yes.
so.
Yeah.
So I put a hard-boiled egg in there,
Oh, that's a good idea.
and it just sort of fills it out a little bit.
Yeah.
So, okay, people, that's one of my hacks.
Mm-hmm.
What haven't I asked you that I probably should have?
Oh boy. Just maybe, what my influences have been throughout, like, why do I even why do I write about food history? It's such a niche area to write about. And you may have asked me last time, I don't remember, but
Why don't you tell us?
yeah, so I mean, like I mentioned before, my mother and aunts and grandmother all were really just wow at cooking. I mean, they all were experts, and I think that influenced me a great deal. And even now, my daughter is going for a master's in nutrition. So it just trickles through my
Really?
family.
Okay.
Yeah. And we all really have this appreciation of food and healthy eating and all of that. And to me, I feel like there's so much history we can learn through food. Food is the channel that, you can really follow things. Why did they change a certain way? Why do we eat a certain way now, but we didn't way back
Right.
when, and how things evolved, and just seeing how they used to cook and how we cook now and what we think of as healthy now versus what we did then, and all of that, like, to me. So all of those influences over time, I think, just made me want to write more and more about food and the history of it. And yeah,
Well, I think you have a couple more books in you.
I hope. Yeah. I also
Yeah.
want to write a Gilded Age tea book to kind of round out those other two cookbooks and make a trilogy. And it's great because I have my grandmother's, even great grandparents' dishes that we use in a lot of the photo shoots for those. So it's nice to see that because people don't often use those things anymore at all. But I always tell people, like, bring them out and enjoy them. They're meant to be used. So
Well, I think I said on the first show, I have Staffordshire, I have Minton, I have all these beautiful plates, gold plates. And, if I entertain, I pull them out. I don't know. I just can't see using them for regular meals for myself. But
yeah, I can
they
see that.
just, they
Yeah.
deserve a certain respect, the china.
Yeah.
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 Well, Becky, thank you for joining us. We will see
Yeah.
you in 3 years when
Right.
the new cookbook comes out.
Sure.
And stay in touch. And thank you again for joining us. Continued success and joy. Thank
Thank you
you.
so much for having me. Take care.
All right.
Bye.
Okay, everyone. History is not done at the Food Enthusiast. Next week's guest will be Lenny Sorensen. She is retired from being the African American research historian at Monticello, and she continues to lecture, consult, and write on issues of food history while teaching home provisioning and rural life skills from her home in western Albemarle County, Virginia. Her most recent appearances as a history presenter can be seen in the documentaries High on the Hog, Netflix 2021, and Finding Edna Lewis on PBS, which won an Emmy in 2025. If you need to reach me, you can reach me at Dara Cooks on Instagram and on Facebook, The Food Enthusiast. Feel free to go back in the show's archived interviews at jmoreliving.com. Under the food menu, you will find the Food Enthusiast tab, so all the shows are there. We truly appreciate it when you share our show with friends and family. May your plates always, always remain full. See you next Thursday.